Welcome to 1850 Main Street, a place where friends get together and talk about their country and hope for a brighter future. Your hosts have built this spot over the past 40 years, meeting every day with people who are in the headlines and behind the real stories. Today, Rob Walgate and Alan C. Duncan from the Public Square are joined by David Zanotti, the CEO of the American Policy Roundtable.
With the election approaching and absentee ballot requests being submitted soon, we've got a major question in mind. Can we trust the United States Postal Service to get everyone's ballots delivered in time?
Pop quiz. What's Newman's real name?
Ooh, Wayne Knight.
One of your favorites.
He's an actor. Yeah. He just played the role well. I mean, there's some people who aren't the lead or aren't the star, but man, are they the best at supporting the main cast.
Yeah, character actor. Yeah.
So do you think there's like millions of people who don't know who Newman is now? Because the Seinfeld show's been off the air so long?
Probably.
Well,
I mean, it's been
off the air. Who are you kidding? It's on like 3 times today, I'll bet.
it's in syndication, and it's on. I'm not sure what streaming service is on Netflix right now.
It's Netflix,
is it Netflix now? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's probably fallen out of the cultural lexicon a little bit, but I'm sure there's still a lot of people that get their reference.
Yeah, they get the reference, but there's some of the episodes. That's the thing. You watch these old school sitcoms, and there's some that they put out there that they would have never been allowed to do today. I mean, as far as I mean, you think of the one with the wooden Indian. I mean, on Seinfeld, they would have never got away with that. With the one they did with Kramer wouldn't wear the ribbon. I mean, that felt like the whole COVID episode right there. There's so many that.
Why don't you just tell me what movie?
Yes, movie phone. Oh my goodness, there's so many.
So Newman, let's talk about Newman. We've got to talk about Newman.
Yeah, he worked for the United States Post Office. It was the kind of the running gag that, he was deficient at his job or took it easy on his job.
The mail never stops.
The mail never stops. Yeah.
So Newman is the guy.
He's
all about the post office.
And
Newman runs endless schemes with Kramer because Kramer and Newman are friends, and somehow Kramer always manages to talk Newman into doing something that today Newman would be in jail for, like in 5 seconds flat. And one of the big spiels was that they got involved. How about the bottle deposit thing? That's one of the things they did.
Was that Michigan? They were going to Michigan?
They were going to Michigan to get 10 cents on a bottle, but they couldn't get their cost factor down for their scam. So Newman found out there was a free mail truck going to Michigan.
Yeah. So that was one. Then the insurance one with the write-off. And Kramer's like, they just write it off. You don't even know what a write-off is. Do you? No, but they're the ones writing it off.
So one of the big scams was that Newman had somehow something about losing the mail, right? It was the whole thing about he was the scam was he could control the delivery of the mail, and that he had all this power. And so you look at the character of Newman. Now, here's the great irony of the story we're telling you right now. You think, well, you guys are kind of like over the top, really. I mean, you have misspent youth, or is this really what you do from 3 a.m. until 7 every day? What are you doing? I never watched Seinfeld when it was on the air. Never watched a single episode.
I didn't either.
All right. Well, you weren't even born. All right. But I never watched Seinfeld because I was raising kids and I was just too busy to watch a show about nothing. To actually keep my job here as the CEO, I had to actually, and so that I could be conversant with our young staff, I had to go back and watch every single episode. It took years to get through every episode because I was so tired of being completely beat about the head and neck with humor I didn't understand.
I wish my wife would have given in and just watched all those episodes. Instead, she just says, I don't want to hear any more Seinfeld references.
She's the school teacher in the house. That's right. All right. So I've actually tried to stay somewhat relevant on this. And as soon as I read this story about the post office coming to the election director saying, we don't got this. I thought 2 things. One, the conspiracy, all right, the shadow campaign to overthrow democracy, because I don't think the post office is really interested. They want what they want is money. They don't care who the president is. Yeah. They want money. They want more money from us. They want more money from Congress. They don't want to be the robber barons, the pirates that try to. They don't. They're just basically saying, we don't got this. what I'm saying is that there's people who are instantly thinking to themselves, whoa, but maybe we could get this. Is this an opportunity? So what would it look like? All right, first off, we got to come back to Newman before we're done. All right. First off, the post office can't get them all delivered. But now everybody's going to do it. The guesstimate is that at least 50% of the vote will come by mail-in because we reached over that threshold in 2020. Why would people go back? So there's a good chance that it would be 50%. Now, 50% of 150 million that's a lot of mail. Who's to say that it will have the kind of priority necessary to be delivered on time? How do you guarantee that?
Well, and in most of these instances, the delivery shouldn't be more than, 4 miles, 5 miles away from your county seat.
But with all the things that are going on,
they're going to ship it 4 states
all over the place. And we do have a recorded instance in recent years of a postman, a delivery person for the post office that was found with 44,000 pieces of mail stashed in his mother's house. At which point in time I said, is his name Newman? It's got to be Newman. Newman is real. All right. So we have instances where it's happened. So let's just do the math. We know we're facing, we're weeks away from the election. We're not talking about this is a year out, 2 years out. We're weeks away from early voting starting, and the post office is saying, danger, warning, danger, Will Robinson, we've got a problem.
So, I mean, shouldn't we just commit to voting in person? Shouldn't we just say, I don't want to trust my vote to somebody else. I want to just go do it in person.
Period. Safest, the fewest steps between you and where the vote will actually be held and counted is the safest bet, period.
I mean, that's what I personally plan to do.
Yeah.
But didn't Donald Trump seem like that sort of caught him off guard in 2020? It seems like I remember him encouraging people to vote in person. But then the thing that ended up overwhelming him in the night was the counting.
It's too big.
Of all these other ballots.
It's gotten too big. And so now the Republicans are basically saying, we'll compete on that same field. We're spending boatloads of money. They're going to chase the ballots just as much. So both parties now are committed to saying, we don't care how you vote, but make sure you vote. And the Republicans are saying, and make sure we don't get beat in mail-in ballots. So if you had a preference, we'd prefer you vote by mail.
My thing is, it's just raw numbers anyway. If you have more people that vote, no matter how they do it, as long as you can count them accurately.
Exactly. But let's talk about the as long as. Every one of those state election laws says the ballots must be delivered by such and such a date and such a time, or they are not valid. Now, here's where this gets a little bit humorous,
or postmarked, right?
Postmarked, yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, why don't they just post date it to
some showed up without postmarks on it. Remember that? That was Pennsylvania, wasn't it?
And that's another problem. What happens when it shows up without a postmark? So the question of what is a valid mail-in ballot has been something state law defines. And part of that definition is it has to have been in receipt. It's got to have been delivered by the post office to the Board of Elections, right? Because that's where the counting goes. The post office doesn't do the counting. You send it in, it's got to be delivered it's got to be delivered. It can't just be postmarked. It's got to be delivered by such and such a time to be counted. If the mail's late, it's too late. Well, how much window of time do we have? Well, it's a November 5th deadline. In most cases, if you're not in by November 5th or a day after, you're too late.
Thanks for stopping by at 1850 Main Street. We're glad you're here. Do you want to learn more about what's really going on behind the scenes in public policy? Tune in to the Public Square on over 200 radio stations coast to coast, or download the free Public Square mobile app from your app store. Just look for The Lamppost. Find out what America's talking about at thepublicsquare.com.
Not to get super conspiratorial here.
There we go.
But here we go. I'm just throwing out another possibility. You can look by county or by city as to what who people tend to vote for. You could lose a mail truck for a couple days if you wanted to withhold a certain city or county's vote.
Whoa, let's get more specific than that, Alan. The public records of who has applied for a mail-in ballot are right there for anyone to see. Anyone can see. And you can see whether that ballot has been returned or not. That's what chasing mail-in ballots and ballot harvesting is all about. It's getting the data from the state officials or the county officials and chasing a ballot that went out to a home that hasn't yet been returned. That's what they're paying billions of dollars to do, to make sure that you got your ballot in. So here's the question.
And that's why people show up at your house.
Right. To come and get it, or to take you to the post office, whatever they've got to do to get that ballot in. So here's the point. If, in fact, some people decide anywhere within the postal system to pull a Newman and to slow down the mail, to slow walk the mail, let's say we've got 2 swing states. Now, in 2020, there were 5 swing states that turned on vote margins from 10,000 or less to tops 50,000 in regards to the Clinton and Trump race. Let's just say this year there's 2 of those races that are within 10,000 or less. Everybody says that's very possible.
It's very realistic.
Very realistic. And let's just say that a number of people watching what goes on, believing they can get away with it, from either side decide to slow walk the mail in some precinct where they think it would be to their advantage. Now, it gets there. Oops, it just gets there one day too late. Technically, that's an illegal ballot. Technically, it cannot be counted. And if there are 20,000 of those ballots that show up 2, 3, 4 days afterwards, and the margin is 10,000, how is any Secretary of State going to certify the federal election for the presidency? How are they going to do that in good conscience? And if they do, one side or the other, whether they do or they don't, you got a lawsuit. You have a federal lawsuit. Now, that federal lawsuit is going to start in a county court, and it's going to go work at district court, and it's going to go in a district court, and it will work its way up to the Supreme Court. Fastest getaway car. Remember, this is now the end of November, and these processes are happening.
2 months to get it done. Well, inside 2 months.
You've got
7 weeks.
You've got 7 weeks to go from there to the Supreme Court to get a ruling and come back down again, and to get those things counted. And what if the Supreme Court says, hey, you know what? These are state election laws. It's not our problem. We're not going to tell you what a legal or illegal ballot is. It's what the state law says. We're not touching the case. Oh, my goodness. And then you see the mayhem of what happens now. And look, we're talking about this in a vacuum of total nonpartisan neutrality.
Did we see some of this 24 years ago in 2000 when we had to go to the Supreme Court, or the Supreme Court weighed in on a presidential election?
And night after night, we all went home and watched the news and said, what's going to happen now? What's going to happen
Alan
next?
didn't
What's
have
going to happen
Twitter
now?
to check.
Right. Yeah. What's going to happen next? This is exactly the kind of scenario that we're walking into. These 2 states are going to have these huge problems, or 3 states, or whatever. And the post office is telling us up front, it's coming.
How could you help the post office if people were still going to do it?
Go vote in person.
Yeah. Well, sure.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the people that aren't going to, can you staff more people to help the post office? More trucks, more workers? I don't know.
All fair questions, Alan. Sure. Can Congress get together with the Postmaster General and say, okay, look, no kidding here. Yeah. This voting is going to start in about X number of weeks. It's going to start this number of days. We'll put emergency funding into this. This is the 100%. This is the single most important thing you do. And we are sending in people to monitor this to help you to make sure. And, yes, we can fix it going in. Of course we can.
The ballots be separated, put them in a special place where they're dedicated specifically one driver and getting those ballots straight to the Board of Elections in each and every county.
That would be huge.
Okay, now Newman's got some advice.
The following is a message from your friendly local mail carrier.
Hello, zip codes. And you +4s, you know who you are. According to this month-old issue of Dr. Roberta Greenberg's Time magazine subscription, there's been a systematic, premeditated assault on the U.S. mail by President Trump and his so-called Postmaster General. That guy's never even licked a stamp. They've had the unmitigated gall to try to slow down the mail, when everybody knows that the only person who can slow down the mail is a mailman. They've shortened working hours. They got missing mailboxes. They're decommissioning sweet sorting machines to try to delay voting by mail. And it's not just your mail-in ballots you got to worry about. Oh, no. You got to worry about your grandma's blood pressure medicine, your Social Security checks, military benefits, and millions of crate and barrel catalogs. They're just piling and piling up. They're not getting delivered anywhere. It's a disaster. When the mail stops, the world stops. Look, I'm not a political person. Last time I voted was for Flavor of the Month at Baskin-Robbins. But take it from me, a postman. If you want to vote early in person, do it. You want to vote from home? Apply for your ballot and get it in as soon as possible. My brothers and sisters and I in blue will do our solemn best to make sure your ballot is delivered. As mandated by the U.S. Constitution. Article 1, Section 8, Clause... what the hell clause was it? I'm trying to remember. Hey! You picked the wrong government employees to mess with! All right, Donnie. You know those tax returns? The ones you don't want anyone seeing? You should never have mailed those. Good day.
Funny thing is, to use Newman as your spokesperson, none of his harebrained schemes work. Like, he's not a reliable narrator. That's the funny thing. You think about another famous Wayne Knight character is Dennis Nedry from Jurassic Park. You know, he always plays these villains with these harebrained schemes. He's the guy that ends up shutting down the whole system and letting all the dinosaurs out.
So all of this would just be wild-eyed speculation from some fringe element, except for one problem. There was a meeting in Milwaukee in which state election directors were told by an official of the United States Post Office that there's going to be a problem. Now, maybe he was just lobbying for more funds. That'd be smart. I mean, he's getting a lot of attention. Right? And I'm not, for one, suggesting that my personal experiences are sufficient enough to judge the post office. We've had a lot of bad experience with the post office, but we forget all the things that happen at work because we ignore it when it's working. All right, so let's just let that be neutral. But there's enough people who work for the post office who, like all the rest of us, are fallen humans who have some extraordinary passions about the way they want to see government turn out. And let's face it, who wouldn't be tempted, especially if there are people sitting out there who would try to figure out how to exploit this point of weakness the way that they exploited this whole election process during COVID. There are people who do bad things. We all fall down. We live in a fallen world. We're being told there's a problem. And my only question is this: what happens if the problem manifests itself? What would that actually look like?
This conversation isn't over yet, so come on back next time and pull up a chair at 1850 Main Street. To help spread the word, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more, visit 1850mainstreet.com. We'll see you soon.